Hello and welcome to the Capitol Report on NTD Television. I'm Steve Lance. Amid an ongoing investigation, the Department of Justice searches Biden's Rehoboth Beach House in Delaware for classified documents. This as the Republican House Speaker holds his first one-on-one discussions with President Biden. NTD's Iris Tao brings us more.
The Justice Department searched President Biden's vacation home in Rehoboth Beach, Delaware on Wednesday morning. That's according to Biden's lawyers, who later said investigators found no classified documents. But Biden's attorney said officials did take some documents from that home, including, quote, some materials and handwritten notes that appeared to be related to Biden's time as vice president.
Mr. President, we're going to invite the press to leave.
Biden on Wednesday did not take reporters' questions on the latest search. But the White House counsel's office spokesperson told reporters that Biden's been fully cooperative.
Offering unprecedented access to his home in Wilmington, to his home, every single room of his home in Rehoboth as well as.
But he wouldn't say if the FBI had searched any other locations related to Biden.
I don't want to speak too much to the DOJ's practices in an ongoing investigation.
All this as House Speaker Kevin McCarthy talks to Biden about the debt ceiling. Here's what he says afterwards.
I think at the end of the day, we can find common ground. I really do. I've been very clear. The current path we're on, we cannot sustain. We got to change the trajectory to put ourselves on a path to balance.
The White House, however, insisted on Wednesday that it's lawmakers' basic duty to lift the debt ceiling. Reporting from the White House, Iris Tao, NTD News.
The Judiciary Committee today beginning to probe the border surge, possibly laying the groundwork to impeach the Secretary of Homeland Security. Democrats telling us immigration is being used as a political weapon, while Republicans express the dangers of the unprecedented surge at the southern border. NTD's Melina Wisecup reports from Capitol Hill.
Judiciary Chairman Jim Jordan kicking off the very first hearing on the border, pointing to those record high numbers.
1.7 million, the number of illegal migrants that Joe Biden released into American communities. 2,378,944, the number of illegal migrants encountered by CBP on the southwest border in 2022, the highest number.
And after hitting those record high numbers, it's now looking like the number of illegal crossings is on the decline. We're still waiting for those official numbers to be published for the month of January, but they are expected to be lower. And the Biden administration says this is a result of its policies, its latest policies, which expands humanitarian parole for migrants coming from certain countries. Democrats today echoing that same message, saying that there should be solutions to address the root cause of the illegal immigration surge.
There's not one solution because there's not one problem. You've got people who are seeking asylum for legitimate reasons, fleeing from communist countries, fleeing from torture. That's permitted under the law. We need a better way to process those.
Immigration reform is very difficult. The last time we had immigration reform was 35 years ago under that great Republican President Ronald Reagan.
Republicans, however, point to national security issues such as the surge in fentanyl smuggling and empowering cartels, saying that these are the result of the Biden administration's current border policies. Representative Andy Biggs today filed articles of impeachment against DHS Secretary Mayorkas. Here's why.
The amount of drugs and fentanyl, you're still only apprehending and interdicting about 10% according to their estimate, but you have more than ever. You got more terrorists coming in, you got more criminal gang members, so the numbers belie it too. His statements, I've got a whole list of statements that he has made that were untrue.
And some other Republicans tell us they don't believe that impeachment against Mayorkas is warranted. However, they say other consequences should apply.
You take out his salary and position as a result of his failure to complete his duties.
And Speaker McCarthy has called on Mayorkas to resign, otherwise face investigations like this, which could lay the groundwork for his impeachment. And Republicans are hitting this issue from multiple areas. In addition to this hearing in the House Judiciary Committee today, next week the House Oversight Committee will also have border agents come and testify. Now, the Republicans say that this move by the DHS to allow these Border Patrol agents to come testify is a direct response to the GOP threatening subpoena power. Reporting in Washington, D.C., Melina Wisecup, NTD News.
The House Oversight Committee held its first hearing in the new Congress. They're investigating waste, fraud, and abuse in federal COVID-19 pandemic relief programs, possibly totaling hundreds of billions of dollars. NTD's Jason Perry has the story.
We've seen reports that between $163 to $400 billion in unemployment insurance benefits were paid out improperly.
Chairman of the House Committee of Oversight and Accountability, Representative James Comer, led their first hearing in the new Congress. They focused on waste, fraud, and abuse of COVID-19 relief funds.
We've seen reports that between $76 to more than $100 billion in Paycheck Protection Program and economic injury and disaster loan programs were lost to improper payments. We've seen reports that $266 billion in improper payments were made by Medicaid during the pandemic. We owe it to the American people to get to the bottom of the greatest theft of American taxpayer dollars in history.
One of the witnesses, Gene Dodaro, is head of the U.S. Government Accountability Office. He said there is definitely indications of widespread fraud, but it's impossible to know the full extent as investigations are still ongoing.
You know, there's been over 1,000 people who have pled guilty or been convicted. There's over 600 charges still pending against people. The SBAIG has 536 active investigations right now. The Department of Labor IG is opening up 100 new cases every week.
And the Inspector General of the Department of Justice, Michael Horowitz, explained what he thought were some of the main reasons for fraud in COVID relief programs.
The desire to simply get the money out as quickly as possible without taking not an unreasonable amount of time, but an appropriate amount of time to make sure that they were sending the money to the right people.
And he said the agencies need to be better prepared for another national emergency. Representative William Timmons said he's going to draft legislation that will give investigators access to additional tax information that would allow them to better identify those who made fraudulent claims. Jason Perry, NTD News.
I was at the International Religious Freedom Summit here in Washington, D.C., where I had a chance to speak with U.S. Coast Guard Captain Daniel Mode. Mode has been a chaplain with the U.S. military for over 30 years. He served with the Navy, Marine Corps, and the Coast Guard. We discuss religious freedom in the military and how it works in real life. Here's our discussion. Captain Daniel Mode, thank you so much for joining us.
It's great to be here. Thanks. It's great to be at the International Religious Freedom Summit.
And on that note, what brings a captain in our United States military to this event?
So I was asked by the organizers of the International Religious Freedom Summit to talk about what chaplains do in the sphere, especially in national security strategy, and how we interact with religious key leader engagement. How chaplains are deployed all over the world, whether you're in the Army, the Air Force, the Navy, the Marine Corps. I happen to represent the Coast Guard. I'm a Navy chaplain, and I'm serving right now as the chaplain of the Coast Guard, but I also serve with the Marines as well. So Navy chaplains serve the Marine Corps, the Navy, and the Coast Guard. And here we have an amazing opportunity to travel throughout the world, literally be ambassadors, if you will, of the United States, a way for us, all service members, but including chaplains, to engage throughout the world to provide peace and stability, and to engage with our allies and partners and hopefully strengthen those bonds. So the unique way that chaplains can do that.
How much has the right of religious freedom driven your work in the United States military, just dating back to our founding?
Exactly, dating back to our founding. So our first freedom is freedom of religion. And chaplains were an integral part from the very beginning of the United States military. George Washington saw it in a great need, that even if you serve your country in any branch, you're not divorced from your ability to practice your faith. So chaplains are there to obviously provide. I'm a Roman Catholic priest, and I provide for Roman Catholics, but I also facilitate for all other religions. In my 34 years, believe it or not, of being a chaplain, either as a chaplain candidate, a reservist, and now active duty, I've done so much to facilitate for others of non-Christian faith or even of no belief. How can I meet your specific religious needs or where you're at?
As a senior officer in the military, you've traveled the world. When you see and look at, totalitarian regimes, whether it be China or Iran, How does the way that they treat their people, the level of religious freedom in those countries, allow you to assess them from a military standpoint?
So I don't get into the political aspects of that. Obviously, we want to build relationships with all countries, and we want to show what we have in the United States, our democratic values, especially our value of freedom of speech, freedom of assembly, freedom of religion, as being a core value that I think other people will embrace, and especially in the religious freedom aspect, that's where I play.
How important is faith for servicemen and women?
Faith is so important for all of us. Obviously, there are people who have stronger faiths, people who practice a religion, people who don't practice a religion. But everyone is searching for that inner spirit, if you will. And we want to be there to provide that for them. But also, let's say you don't have a spiritual grounding or even a religion that you belong to. Chaplains are still there for you, because one of the other provisions that we do is we care for all. I would say 90% of what I do on a day-to-day basis, maybe not in my senior role, but throughout being a chaplain, is just caring for the needs of each and every service member. They're coming to me not necessarily for religious needs, but just to talk about an issue in their life, maybe a problem that they've had with a family member, advice and counsel, and we do that with strict confidentiality, 100% confidential. They can come to us any day of the week and be able to tell us their story, and we don't tell that to anybody. Their command, doctors or nurses, it's a free environment for them to be able to unload, to decompress, and hopefully we can get them the help that they desire.
And on that note, what type of infrastructure or mechanisms are in place within our military to offer to folks that are looking to practice their faith in the military?
So, well, we try to always establish a chapel on a base. I mostly served in the Navy part of my maritime services. I've served at the Coast Guard Academy. I've served now as a chaplain of the Coast Guard, but the vast majority of my time has been with the United States Navy. So I've been on 49 different ships at sea deployed. I've been assigned to 2 aircraft carriers, the Truman and the George Washington, for extended periods of deployment, and then the flagship of the 7th Fleet, which is the USS Blue Ridge. On all of those structures, I was able to celebrate religious services, whether they had a chapel or used a space for religious services. So imagine that. Here you're in the middle of the ocean, and a chaplain comes aboard, maybe flies aboard, we call it the Holy Helo, and is able to provide a religious service for you. Myself, I provide a Catholic service, but then I'm there for counsel and guidance. The Navy is working very hard and diligently right now to put a Navy chaplain on every ship, all of our destroyers, so that there can be an immediate access to a chaplain.
Captain Daniel Mote, thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, you're welcome. It's a great joy.
Thank you for watching the Capitol Report. If you want to see our full broadcast, check us out at epochtv.com.